Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
Hey, it's our literature unit, and we're on our final day. This is day 3. We've been looking at the book, A List of Cages, A Story of Tragedy and Triumph. Remember, we have 2 boys who are the lead characters, I would say. We've got Adam and Julian. We went on to learn about some of the abusive situations that Julian went through, but also that Julian gained some confidence by auditioning for a school play and getting a lot of positive feedback from that. Also becoming more and more good friends with Adam and his friends. So he felt like he had some support. But ultimately, Russell, the awful, awful uncle, comes back and bursts into a room where Adam and Julian and his friends are having a graduation party and has a gun and tries to threaten to kidnap Julian and murder Adam, but the gun goes off and the bad guy dies. And the story ends well. So we know that at the end, Julian gets to go ahead and live with Adam and his family until he's old enough to be on his own.
Yeah, indeed, but he'll probably remember this tragic event for the rest of his life, and it will continue to affect him.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the story, and indeed, that is what happens sometimes in life. You're not alone if something like this happens to you. There are lots of other people who suffer like you do as well. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read through the entire contents of today's lesson, and we'll talk about some of the themes and ideas in our featured novel, A List of Cages.
Robin Rowe's novel, A List of Cages, tells a story that is by turns tragic and heartwarming. Rowe modeled the book on her own experience with rescuing a nephew from an abusive household. As I wrote, she explains, I found myself channeling my experiences of knowing someone I loved was being abused and feeling helpless to stop it. The book provides a lens on this terrible and complex situation, as both Adam and Julian narrate their own perspectives. While Adam embodies the helplessness of seeing abuse taking place, Julian displays the terrible mixture of emotions and behaviors that result from being a victim of it. Central to the story is Julian and Adam's friendship. At the beginning of the story, Julian is a complete outcast. Renewing his relationship with Adam, who shows him authentic care and interest, makes an enormous difference in his life. Julian realizes he doesn't deserve abuse and reaches for safety and belonging. Adam, though, he seems to have a charmed life, wrestles with the guilt and horror of watching his friend go through hell and having no power to change it. Adam is ultimately altered by being a witness to an abusive situation, no longer as carefree as he once was. Despite revolving around a terribly serious issue, A List of Cages still has many relatable moments for average readers. Adolescence brings sweeping changes in the ways that teenagers interact with the world. Though still a minor, Adam takes on adult-like responsibility for Julian. Julian, for his part, is finding his own identity and facing his fears, obstacles many teens face. Seeing him confront the fears that keep him caged gives readers a sense that it's never too late to start again.
All right, let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. Again, our featured novel is A List of Cages by Robin Rowe. And Robin Rowe's novel, A List of Cages, tells a story that is by turns tragic and heartwarming. So again, this is a novel, and the title is A List of Cages, and it's both tragic and heartwarming. We're saying it's by turns tragic and heartwarming. And if something's heartwarming, well, it makes you feel good. You're happy because something nice happens to the characters.
Which is great. So our author here, Rowe, that's her last name, she modeled the book on her own experience with rescuing a a nephew she has from an abusive household. If you model something on something else, it means you use something that you can relate to or that you have experience with, and you use it as sort of a way to shape the new thing or to create the new thing. We know what a model is. We use models to build things like toy cars, that you can have a model car, model toy car. But you can also be a model and be a fashion model, wear expensive clothes and walk the runway. But here the verb just means to use something as a sort of model or shape to design something else. So she modeled her book based on her own experience. She had a nephew that she rescued from an abusive household. Household here just refers to people who live together in a house. It could be a house or an apartment. It's just the house and its occupants, and they're regarded as a household, as a unit together.
Right, so something bad is going on in the house. Parents might be treating their kids badly. The man or the husband is beating up on the wife, or the wife is beating up on the husband, or they're both beating up on the kids or whatever. So this is an abusive household, and it could be psychological abuse or physical abuse. Abuse, of course, is when you treat somebody badly and you're not supposed to. So that's the noun, abuse. And the adjective is abusive. So this nephew, which would be the son of her sister or her brother, he was in an abusive household, and she had to try to help that nephew out.
Right. She says here, this is a quote from the author herself. She says, "As I wrote," she explains, "I found myself channeling my experiences of knowing someone I loved was being abused and feeling helpless to stop it." So if you channel your experiences, it just means you use those experiences to try to understand something, or you use something to imitate something else to come up with your own ideas. Sometimes we see dancers who will channel Michael Jackson and come up with dance moves or dance steps that look like Michael Jackson. Here she's saying she had a similar experience in her own life. So she used that or based her own writing on the experiences she had rescuing her nephew. Of course, she says here she felt helpless to stop the abuse. It must have been a horrible position to be in.
Right, so of course she has some experience in this situation, so she was able to write with authority here. And the book provides a lens on this terrible and complex situation as both Adam and Julian narrate their own perspectives. Now, we're using the word lens here in this sentence. A lens is a piece of glass in your glasses or in your camera lens. You can have a camera lens, so if you have a lens or if you're having a lens provided, it's just giving you a way to look at something. So it provides a lens or a look at this terrible and complex situation because both Adam and Julian narrate their own perspectives. So we hear the story from both their points of view. Of course, books and stories are narrated from a point of view. You have first person where the person saying, I did this and I did that. Second person is not so common, but third person is pretty common. He, she did this, etc. So in this particular case, you get the first person narrative from both Adam and Julian. They provide their own perspectives. And we've got the word narrate here, which means you tell a story, you narrate a story, and the noun form is narration or narrator. If you're telling a story, like many years ago, I was in a 6th grade play of A Christmas Carol, and I was the narrator. I sat off to the side and told the story while other people acted out the parts of Scrooge and Tiny Tim.
Now, while Adam embodies the helplessness of seeing abuse taking place, Julian displays the terrible mixture of emotions and behaviors that result from being a victim of abuse. So if you embody something, here we're saying Adam embodies the helplessness of seeing abuse take place. So if you embody an idea or quality, and that's what Adam's doing, he's embodying this quality of helplessness, it means he's kind of being a symbol or he's trying to demonstrate, or he's symbolizing, he's representing helplessness, you could say. He embodies the helplessness of seeing abuse take place. If something takes place, it happens, right? So maybe you are stuck in traffic because an accident has taken place in front of you, and you have to wait until the police can come and just kind of take care of matters. So he embodies the helplessness, or he is kind of symbolizing the helplessness that our author felt herself when she saw abuse taking place. Now, what's Julian doing, Tom?
Well, he displays the terrible mixture of emotions and behaviors that result from being a victim of abuse. And that, of course, can happen because if you're a victim, you've got lots of emotions. You're mad at the person causing the abuse, and you're mad at yourself. You think maybe you're at fault or something. There's all sorts of stuff going on in your mind there, which is natural, but still it's a pretty messy situation. And we get that perspective from Julian because he's got that mixture of emotions and behaviors. And that, of course, is expected if you're the victim of abuse or bullying or whatever. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是 Anna。我们昨天跟前天带大家看了这个故事 A List of Cages 行李箱里的10000颗星星。那么这作者是谁呢？作者是 Robin Rowe， 他出现在我们第一段第一句最前面的地方。其实这个故事就时而悲惨又时而感人，所以同样在这个第一句的地方，我们看到一个限定用法关系子句哦。先行词是 a story， 后面的 that 一直到句尾则是限定用法关系子句， that 是一个关代。好，那其实 Rowe 呢，本身是以他自己这种从施虐的这种家庭当中救出侄子的经验来这个写出这一本书。不过在第二句他的动词用的是蛮特别，他用 model 这个字。那 model something with another 指的是用什么什么东西来写出这本书，或用什么什么东西来形成另外一个东西，所以这个动词用的还蛮妙的。不过当时呢，他就这个在受访的时候，他就说他发现其实他自己正在导入一个有关于知道自己爱的人受到虐待，却无能为力的一种经历。所以其实我们读起来觉得很恐怖，因为这种小说当中描述的视角是 Adam跟 Julian 他们有点各自表述自己的想法。 Adam 他目睹了这种虐待的状况，他很无助，然后呢觉得自己有一种责任感。但是呢 Julian 则表现出一种受虐者可能产生一种很可怕跟这种感到害怕情绪跟行为的一种 mixture， 一种融合。我们看一下第一段第5句的地方。第5句一开始这里的 while我们可以判断一下，它是 when 或者是 although 的意思呢？以这里来说的话，文意上是 although， 虽然 Adam 他写的是什么什么，是这个文意上会比较通顺一点。不过在 while 这里的子句当中，我们看到一个感官动词 see 的用法。感官动词我们不管是哪一种形态，只要是看后面加受词就会加上 ing 或者是 pp。 例如在这里我们看到的是 seeing abuse， 看到虐待发生，虐待发生的 take place 是永远主动嘛，所以感官动词后面加上受词 abuse， 再直接降动词 ing 或者是 pp， 在这里的 abuse 就是所谓虐待。好，那么后面呢，我们看到的 Julian 所展现的是一种 terrible mixture of emotions and behaviors， 在这里则带了一个限定用法关系子句，先行词从 the terrible blah 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 一直到 behaviors， that 到句尾可以左右括号。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about Robin Rowe and her debut novel, A List of Cages, and what this novel actually is about, some of the themes and ideas in it, and also talking about the author herself, how she went through a similar experience and channeled her experiences to write this particular novel. Now, moving on to paragraph 2, it says central to the story is Julian and Adam's friendship. Central to the story just means really important to the story. An important part is their friendship. You could also switch this sentence to say Julian and Adam's friendship is central to the story. Those are both ways to write this particular sentence. Either way is great. So at the beginning of the story, Julian, if you recall, is a complete outcast. If you're an outcast, it means you're very lonely. You don't have any friends. You're probably, kind of walking around by yourself. You're not with a group of buddies at school. An outcast also means people think you're kind of weird. They don't want to become friends with you.
Outkast, I think, is also a famous hip-hop group from the 90s. I think they did the song Hey Ya, but that's another topic to talk about. But in any case, if you're an outcast, you're an outsider, you don't belong. And renewing his relationship with Adam, who shows him authentic care and interest, makes an enormous difference in his life. So remember, they were friends for a while, and then they kind of drifted apart, and then their friendship was revived. So they renewed their friendship, renewing his relationship with Adam, and that made a big difference in his life. And remember, Adam was actually very concerned about Julian. He showed him authentic, sincere care and interest, and that was important to him. It's important to have somebody support you.
It is. Now here we're using the word authentic instead of genuine. They are synonyms. They can be replaced with each other. So authentic again means real, genuine, not fake, not forced or just something that someone's pretending. They show him authentic or genuine care and interest, and that makes an enormous difference in his life. Julian realizes he doesn't deserve abuse. This is an important point because a lot of victims of abuse are told by their abuser that they did something wrong, that they deserve to be beaten or bullied or hurt in some way. So a lot of victims actually think it's their fault. They're being abused. But if you have a good counselor or a good therapist, they can help these victims of abuse understand or come to realize that they didn't deserve the abuse. It's not their fault. It's the fault of the abuser or the bully.
Right, but sometimes it's difficult for the victim to realize that. But in this case, Julian is fortunate. He realizes he doesn't deserve abuse, that it's not his fault, and reaches for safety and belonging. So if you reach for something, it could mean literally you're trying to grab something that is far away from you. I'm reaching for the book on the top shelf, for example. But in this particular case, it means you're looking for safety. You're trying to find safety by having friends or shelter or going to a family's relative's house or something, so you can be safe there away from an abusive situation or something like that. So he looks for safety and he wants to belong. Belonging is the state, of course, of feeling you have friends and you're part of a group and you're not an outsider, you're not an outcast, you're not a loner, you belong. You have a sense of belonging. And Adam, though he seems to have a charmed life, wrestles with the guilt and horror of watching his friend go through hell and having no power to change it. Remember, Adam is a popular kid in high school. He doesn't really need to be too concerned about Julian there. He just has his friends and his activities and stuff like that. But he's still very concerned about his friend. He does have a charmed life, which means you have a privileged life. Things are going well for you. you have a nice family, you got good friends and stuff. But here he wrestles with guilt. If you wrestle with something, you struggle with that thing, and he's got guilt. Guilt, of course, means you feel bad about something, you regret something, and therefore he's feeling guilty all the time because he feels like, gee, my friend Julian is obviously being abused by his uncle, but I'm not doing anything about it, or I didn't do anything before. So, of course, you're going to feel regret or guilt.
Right. And he also has to deal with the horror of watching his friend go through hell and having no power to change it. That's that helplessness that we talked about in paragraph 1. So he feels helpless, he can't do anything, but he also feels really guilty because he probably should have realized that Julian was in danger, at least in more danger than they thought. So he has to kind of deal with that himself. Now, when you go through something, it just means that you have that experience. You have to bear that experience, endure that experience. You go through something. We use a lot when someone has to go through something that's difficult. You know, I had to go through a pretty tough time in college when I lost my dad. My dad passed away, and I had to go through that tough experience. Here we're saying that Julian had to go through hell. Hell is used when we want to describe a situation that's horrible, that you can't imagine having to deal with, especially a young kid. Julian's just a young boy. So he had no power to help his friend, so that was hard for Adam as well. Adam is ultimately, or finally at the end, he's altered or changed by being witness to an abusive situation. And when you go through something that serious, it changes you forever. And it says here he's no longer as carefree as he once was. If you're carefree, oh, wow, life's great. You have no worries at all. Kids can be carefree if they are in a really nice, wonderful home where they feel a lot of support and love. So if you're carefree, you just don't have any anxieties or worries or responsibility. But once Adam experiences this, he realizes that life is harder than he thought.
Indeed, and here in the final paragraph it says, despite revolving around a terribly serious issue, a list of cages still has many relatable moments for average readers. So it revolves around this terrible issue of family abuse. Even though it is kind of a sad story, there are still lots of things for people to relate to. Adolescence brings sweeping changes in the ways that teenagers interact with the world. Adolescence, of course, is coming of age. You're changing from a child into an adult, and you have to deal with those changes. And it's especially hard when you're in an abusive family like Julian.
Yeah, it says here, Adam takes on adult-like responsibility for Julian. If you take something on, you accept a challenge. So he accepts this adult-like responsibility for Julian. He no longer acts like a child. He is acting like an adult, really, if you take something on like that. So he accepts that responsibility. He acquires it. He is now trying to help his friend. Julian, for his part, is finding his own identity and facing his fears. His fears are called obstacles here. An obstacle is something that gets in your way. Sometimes an obstacle can help you become a stronger person. Sometimes there are real obstacles in the road and your car can't go around them. You'll have to stop and wait till they remove it from the road. But here they're more figurative, not literal. So these are challenges, obstacles that he has to face. So seeing him confront the fears that keep him caged gives readers a sense that it's never too late to start again. Yeah, sometimes kids just need to know that there's hope. And if they see somebody else who's had a rough childhood and they were able to overcome it, it gives them hope too that they can have success.
Yep, you can talk to your school counselor, or I believe there's a help number you can call, and there are people out there willing to give you some advice and help you out. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
那到底这个故事的核心是什么呢？这个故事的核心其实就是 Julian 跟 Adam 的友谊，这出现在我们第二段第一句的地方。不过第一句这边是一个倒装句哦，它是一个地方副词放句首的倒装，它是用来强调这个地方副词，因为我们接下来要讲故事的核心到底是什么嘛，所以句子本来应该是 Julian and Adam's friendship is central to the story， 我们要强调这个核心其实就是他们的友谊，所以把这个地方副词放在句首。 Central to the story is Julian and Adam's friendship， 因为在故事一开始的时候 Julian 本来就是一个阿边嘛，那么 Adam 跟他展现出一个关怀，还有真心的一种对他的一种兴趣，这样子的重新建立关系的时候呢 Julian 的生活就产生了一个改变，而且意识到他就是不应该要受虐，而且应该要努力的寻求安全感还有归属感。我们在同样第二段这个地方请注意一下第三句这边的 renewing 是整个句子的主词哦。 Adam后面逗点之后的 who 一直到 interest 逗点是补充说明的关系子句，补充说明 Adam 的状况，所以在这里不是分词构句哦，这里的 renewing his friendship with Adam 是整个句子的主词。那么 Adam 呢，虽然他是过着看起来好像一帆风顺的生活，但是其实他一直努力对抗着，因为看着他的朋友 Julian 经历像这种地狱般的生活，却没有办法改变的一种他觉得一种很内疚跟恐惧的感觉。在第五句比较接近后面的地方，我们看到 watching 感官动词后面我们刚刚说啊，我们刚刚看到第一段的 see 后面加动词 ing 啦，或者是 pp， 有一种情况之下感官动词后面可以加上动词原形。如果你看到的那个动词，例如在这里是 watch his friend go through something，在这里的看如果是完整动作，也就是 Adam 看到 Julian 经历了整个痛苦悲伤的过程，如果你要强调的是完整动作的话，感官动词加受词后面的确可以加上动词原形。好，那在这里的 watching 跟 and 后面的 having 则是前面OF 介系词的受词，那这个 OF 呢，则跟着是前面的 horror， 就是这个恐惧。到底是什么恐惧呢？就是看到 Julian 经历了整个像地狱般的这种痛苦 and having no power to change it， 而完全没有办法做任何的行为的这样子的一种改变的这种恐惧。那当然 Adam 最后面因为看到这整个暴力的情况啊，就不再像以前那样子无忧无虑了。那么当然这样子的一个小说呢，是一个很严重的一个问题，因为它包含的是一些家庭暴力啊，还有一些青少年啊对于自己的一些身份认同啦，还有一些很多青少年面临的障碍。所以如果大家有空的话，的确可以把这本书从图书馆借出来看看哦。我是安娜，我们下次见。
That is it for today, everybody. So thanks for joining us. And of course, our explanation and summary of our featured novel, A List of Cages, is no excuse for you to not try to read the book. So indeed, do try to read the book, and you might enjoy it, and it will help you maybe with your adolescence and with your English reading ability. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.